Hi guys, so I'm Vaishnavi Rathi. I graduated as an architect from Mumbai in 2019 and I'll be starting my MBA in NMIMS Mumbai in June 2021 now. So this is my first video and I thought the channel could actually talk about what it is like to step into MBA after a graduation like architecture, which is in itself a very niche profession, and the kind of roles that it would open up for me post this and the kind of opportunities that it would open up. So my motivation to start this was that when I started with my prep and with my decisions between whether MIM or MBA or whether to pursue it in India or abroad, and the kind of limited work ex that I had because I graduated in 2019 and decided to do an MBA in 2020. So I didn't have a lot of resources, for example, a lot of people around me to talk about this because very few people from my field even choose this as an option forward. And the kind of anxiety and the kind of doubts that I had in my mind. So this would be my personal blog where I talk about what it has been like so far and what it is going to be ahead, and my interests, and maybe if it could connect with some of you, and maybe if it helps you out in some way that I wish it had for me. So the first video is going to talk about either MIM or MBA, like what to choose and the kind of admits that I had with respect to my score and the kind of colleges that I applied to, and finally the decision that I made to pursue it here in India itself. So here I go. So when I started in March 2020, where I thought that this is what I want to do here on. So my motivation basically was that when after I graduated, my thesis that I did as my final year thesis, I thought maybe architecture for me is not just design itself, but the ideas that happen at a macro scale, a macro level, and I didn't enjoy going into the details as much. So my work that I did after my graduation was a fellowship that I did, and which talked about policies and how could I give recommendation for a state water policy for a member of parliament who represented the constituency of Bihar. And simultaneously I was writing for a think tank where I got to know about many more things that go into urban development, go into urbanization, and how architects play one particular role, and there's much more to this. There's much more to development and ideas of development, and that's where MBA fit in for me, where I thought maybe I could like step out from my technical domain and sort of step into a more managerial or more macro level domain. So the first step was actually to give all exams that are possible. For example, CAT, GMAT, SNAP, and MAT. So these are the exams that are targeted, and on the scores that I got. So on the scores that I got, the admits that I had in India and abroad were, so one of them was NMIMS, and the best admit that I had abroad was ESSEC in France, where I received a scholarship for around 20 lakhs. But the main decision that came down to whether MIM or MBA, and so there are these key differences between MIM and MBA, where MIM is actually for professionals who have limited work ex, less than 2 years, because your batch will be like that. The batch itself is not that experienced, your batchmates, and it meant that if I was pursuing it from, like, the school itself was situated in France, so it meant that I would need to work outside itself and for a couple of years, even if I plan to come back. And pursuing in India itself meant that I would get to work here from, considering that from a good business school, then you get a good entry into the market that India holds, and it would be easier for me to enter rather than taking a degree from outside and then directly coming back. So my decision to actually pursue the course itself, to pursue my profession itself in India after my graduation, sort of motivated me to choose MBA over MIM. And yeah, so that was about between MIM and MBA. And so when I started preparing, so that itself was a task, because 5 years of graduation and then almost a year of working, and I'd forgotten what quantitative aptitude is. I had never even touched what LRDI is. I had no idea what LRDI is. Verbal, yes, because I read, but that became one of the sections that actually sort of was challenging eventually, because it's easier to master quant and DILR, but verbal, you require consistent reading and understanding. So all I could say is that it felt tough even while preparing, but I understood the reason why these exams are conducted, because it's actually required when you start in. You need to understand how to infer data, how to represent data, how to make deductions from data. I mean, in the end, eventually you're actually solving a puzzle that is given to you by your client, and you're proposing the best possible solution. So it's necessary to actually enjoy DILR, and it was one of the ways in which I had sharpened my analytical side, and for the past 6 years I'd actually put in to sharpen my creative side, which would be useful now, I hope, when I start with my MBA, and hopefully it makes more sense to use my creative side when I start with marketing and sales as my specialization in MBA. So that was about where my prep started. And so but all I could say in this first video is that even if you have like a hint of doubt of whether you're not sure whether, like for me, whether MDes or MArch was the way forward, and it's okay to explore that doubt, because I had that doubt, because all my life I thought after architecture I'll go and pursue MArch, because that's how I was building my CV and the kind of internships that I had as a part of my undergraduation, or the kind of exchange programs that I went through, hoping that this would sort of culminate into a good master's in architecture university. But I didn't see myself like that anymore, and my motivation to start my own enterprise someday, creating a positive impact on the world, sort of made MBA like a better sought after choice. And it's okay to explore that doubt, but it's also better to be clear of why you want to do it and where the motivation comes from. Because for me personally, it was the idea of a social enterprise that I opened someday after understanding how the market works, what works for your customer, how do you decide your consumers, the price points, the market segment, how does that work? Because after product development, how do you place the product itself plays a big role, and that is something that I wanted to venture in, and that is something that played an important role in all of my interviews, where it's not common for architects to even sit for an interview. This was about it, where I talked about my MIM and MBA admits and why MBA, and I'll go further into it as and when I start putting out more videos of why I think exploring marketing post this would be something that I would be keenly interested in, and what I've done to sort of cultivate that interest so far. And yeah, so